folks, Randy here doing cut and trim. So 14 years ago today, when this video gets uploaded, the person I was probably closest to as a kid passed away. That would be the original dual cut and trim owner, which would be my father. He passed away of cancer in 2005, a couple months after I graduated high school. And I don't know, every year, every year that I've had this channel, every Father's Day, I try and make a video and it just doesn't work out. And every time his birthday comes around, I try and make a video, it doesn't work out. And every anniversary of his death that comes by, I try and make a video and it just doesn't work out. So I'm gonna try again this year, see if 10th time's the charm. But I always had a lot of respect for my father, and I loved him. I mean, I really liked him. He was one of the better men that I've ever known, and the guy that I really tried to model myself after. Honestly, if you wanted to get to know my father, I think, is my opinion, he'd be basically kind of like me, except better. There's a couple things I feel like I've outdone him in, but as far as like a human being, I think he probably wins. Because he was one of those guys that, like, from the outside, I could understand why people would think maybe he was grumpy, because he if you weren't friends of his, he didn't necessarily talk that much, but when he did, he was, one of the funniest people you'd ever meet. He liked to make up songs and tell jokes, did impressions, but it was like impressions that nobody on YouTube would appreciate, like he had a killer impression of like several folks that I went to church with. And several of the pastors at my church, he was also very good at doing impressions of them. so like, I could tell you, like, he had a killer Mike U impression, but that not going to really mean anything to you. But he was a really wise guy. And I learned, there are several lessons of his that I learned, or that were imparted when I was a kid, that I still remember. Like I said, I'm 32 now. He died when I was 18, and there are a couple things that he did that just really, really stuck with me that I never forgot. The first one that comes to my mind was, we were in traffic, and we were in traffic, and one of these morons goes onto the side of the road and starts driving down the shoulder. Which everybody hates it when you do that, because there's nothing worse than somebody that butts in line. And so they go as far as they can go until the shoulder ends, and then they're trying to get in, and nobody will let them in for good reason. And my dad points at the guy. I think I was probably like 11 or 12 when we had this conversation. He points at the guy and he says, "You see that guy?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That guy's a real jerk, isn't he?" And I said, "Yeah, he is." And my dad said, "He doesn't deserve to have anybody let him in." And I said, "Nope, he sure doesn't." And my dad said, "I'm going to let him in. If he's still trying to get in when I get up there, I'm going to let him in, even though he doesn't deserve it. And son, you need to realize Jesus does that for us all the time." That was the kind of guy he was. Actually, it almost chokes me up a little bit just thinking about that. That was a powerful lesson for an 11, 12-year-old that I never forgot. Another one, man, I don't want to tell stuff out of order, because the next one I'm thinking of is honestly, is the last one. So I'll save that. you had a last lesson. Another one was, I was, believe it or not, I was a chunky kid. I know it's hard to believe seeing my physique now, but I actually was fairly chunky as a child. And I liked playing sports, though. I liked baseball, basketball, and soccer. I was like, yeah, why not? So I joined the soccer team, but, that wasn't very easy. And so I'm trying to play soccer, but it's exhausting. And one of the first things you do in soccer practice is you got to run a couple laps around the field, which is no fun at all. And so I was doing that, and it was tough. Like, I mean, I was like like just really raspy breathing. It was so difficult. And I remember my dad saying, like, no matter what you do, no matter how slow you go, do not stop running. It was like, I was like, yeah, okay, well, that's easy for you. You're just standing there. And he said, no matter what, do not stop running. He said, if you feel like you got to stop, if you feel like you can't go any further, just take one more step and then see what happens after that. And if that step works out, just see if you can take one more, see if it works out. And you just keep doing that. And that's how you can be tougher than everybody else. You don't have to decide you're going to run the whole thing. Just see if you can get one more step in. And then if you can, reassess after that. And that, man, that's still, I still use that now. I mean, I'm, full grown man. And I still do that, like, especially on like super hot days where it's getting brutal and I'm, you're winded and you just want to quit. Like I'll do that now. It's like, well, let me just go take one more step and see what happens. How that works. Let's just do one more, see how that works out. And I keep going, and that's how I'm able to get things done. That's how honestly, I'm not trying to be that guy. That's how I'm able to work harder than most people I know. It's not that I actually like have more endurance, or even though in a lot of cases that is the case. It's not that I'm tougher. It's none of those things. It's just I just take one more step, just see if I can take one more step, and then see if I can take one more step after that. And just never quit. I don't think there's anything else that I want to bring up. There's not. I guess the last thing I'll bring up is the last 6 months of his life were pretty rough. He was having a fight with cancer, and it was not the most pleasant of fights, because cancer has a nasty habit of fighting dirty, from what I can tell. And it was tough. He was, he lost a lot of weight during that fight, and it was a rough time. I guess this video is gonna have to get edited because I gotta move this guy's whatever you call the recycle bin. So that fight with cancer was pretty rough. It took a lot out of him, but I feel like it brought him even closer to God than he was before. Like he I don't know how to describe it, but it was a really rough time. It was a really rough time for me. I was a teenager. I drove him to a lot of his appointments, a lot of the chemo and radiation. And I would sit there with him, and those appointments could be a couple hours long. And then after that, I'd go to I have to drive to basketball practice in my senior year, which was like, why am I even doing this? Sometimes I would just drive to basketball practice, but I would just sit in the parking lot and I just wouldn't even go in. So I was just like, there's just no way. But I remember towards the end, he ended up getting MRSA, because hospitals are really good for you. And he was gonna, I think he got it in his heart, and I don't remember all the details. I don't feel like rehashing them. But he was gonna have to go in for heart surgery, and this was kind of the beginning of the end, like the beginning of the end. And so we're sitting around there, and the doctors said there was an 85% chance of success, and all I heard was 15% chance of failure, and 15% chance of failure is a pretty high chance, when you're talking about somebody you love. And I was mad, man, and I just kind of like got my head down, and I'm just angry, because it's just like he over that last 6 months of his life, he was in the hospital more than he wasn't, and there was just so much just trauma happening. It was brutal. I mean, I'm not getting into it, but man, it was just a lot of just constant anxiety, constant adrenaline. And so they give us that, news, and we're sitting in there with my dad, basically before he's going to go into surgery, 15% chance, and I'm upset, and I'm just mad. And he looks at me, and daggone it if this part doesn't get me every single time. That's why I never talk about it. But he looks at me and he's like, son. Well, I mean, he was a lot weaker, but that was the vibe. Son, like, come on, man. And I look at him and he says, God has not been unkind to me. It was like, as an 18-year-old, you're thinking to yourself, like, well, I don't know about all that. But, like, you just marvel at the faith that this guy has, because, I mean, I certainly didn't have that faith. I felt like, actually, God had been rather unpleasant at that point. But he, like, for him, that to be, and of course, he said, I love you, and I said, I love you too, and, we went through all that. And that was the last actual conversation I ever had with my father. But, like, for that to be essentially the last thing that my dad said to me, jeez. Like how, what state of mind, like, what relationship do you have to have with your creator, man, where you can go through all the stuff he went through, and I'm not detailing it here, but you can go through all that stuff and come out at your lucid end and say, God has not been unkind to me. It's like, goodness gracious. Yeah, it's amazing. And he ultimately passed, I think, 7 weeks later. It was a pretty rough fight with more trauma, and we're not going to talk about that. But, it would have been, the day you're watching this would have been, it will be 14 years since he passed. And I don't know, just wanted to talk about, he was a fantastic guy. I learned so much about being a father, actually, from him. That's another big lesson. I use him as the model for everything I do as a parent. One of the things I remember most was my dad always got on the floor with me, like literally on the floor. Whether we were wrestling, because I really liked WWF when I was a kid, or playing with G.I. Joes, which playing with G.I. Joes with him was really cool because he could do all these voices. Lincoln Logs not as much, mostly G.I. Joes. Playing video games, we had Tommy Lasorda baseball, where it was like all made up not made up teams, but made up players because I couldn't get licensing. Played with that with him so much. We had our own like wiffle ball league, like me and my dad, like we would pick like players. He would pick like historic Orioles, and I would pick, like, every year I had a theme. Like I would pick like great Yankees or top Negro League players, or all-time Cubs greats, because I was a Cubs fan as a kid. Just like he was always there. I played baseball, soccer, and basketball from age 5 to age 18. And I don't think it was until he got sick that, I think during that time period, I mean, who knows how many hundreds of games I played. But before he got sick, he maybe missed 2 or 3 total. That was it. So I always knew that I was a priority to my father, and I've tried to do the same for my son. You know, he was the model that I've used for how to be a good parent, and you know, again, he probably did it better than I do, but I don't know. Not a more best man I ever knew. He's the standard I hold myself to in many ways, and to better or worse degrees, I do my best to match that. So, 14 years. Plan on seeing him in heaven. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but that is the intention. So I'm gonna end it there. I appreciate you guys watching this. If you did watch it all the way to the end, I appreciate it. This video is a little self-indulgent, but I don't know. I don't talk to a lot of people, and I definitely don't share my emotions with people. So I figured I would just talk about it here where I can't actually see you. So so it kind of feels like I'm just talking to myself, which makes it less threatening. But I guess I'm going to go get back to work. This is Randy with Dual and Cut and Trim. Thank you very much for watching this. Have a good one.